Hello, and welcome to Inspired Leadership, a podcast where we meet with changemakers and heads of HR in various roles to learn all the things that we can from them to help with our changing world of work. I'm Jamie Klein, CEO and founder of Inspire HR. We are kicking off our 19th year, and we do all things fractional and interim in the areas of HR business partner and talent acquisition, total rewards, and talent management, always with a focus on transparency and inclusion. And we work with companies large and small, and it is always so fun to get together and meet with folks to learn about the things that they are doing to really make sure we're ready for tomorrow's workplace. And today I have the distinct pleasure of meeting with our guest, Nick Benequista, SVP of People and Capability at MasterCard. And I've known Nick as a colleague and someone that I admire for many years. And it is my distinct pleasure to have him here today. So Nick, thank you. Welcome. It is so good to see you.
Well, thank you so much for that warm welcome, Jamie. And 19 years, hey, 20's coming up,
You better
big
believe it.
milestone.
And I'm 27, so I'm not sure how that math works out, but here we are.
Yeah, youngest owner of a company. I remember
I
that. Yeah,
love
that
it.
article came out. Yeah.
Exactly. I think it was in Fortune. Yes. And people say I have as much energy as someone of that age. So here we are. But Nick, I'd love to just start by learning a little bit about you. Can you just briefly tell us about your role and kind of your career journey that led you to this very important seat that you're in?
Sure. Well, thank you for that. At MasterCard here, I am one of our people business partners. Some call it HR business partner, but it's the role where we square up to the businesses that we support, focused on organizational effectiveness, talent management, coaching, advising. And so I have three internal clients that I have within the MasterCard business: so the chief administrative officer of the company, our chief people officer, and our vice chairman who runs strategic growth. So that's my role here. I've been doing this role for a little over 3 years now. When I started my company, I started at Liz Claiborne in the apparel industry, but I wanted to learn best in class. So I went to American Express, where I do think that was my grad school. I didn't go to grad school, but certainly learning the HR profession at Amex is where I got a lot of my best in class learning from. So soon after that, I went over to Getty Images to try to help uplift the HR function there. And my time there really taught me about how much I really enjoyed working at larger companies. The maturity of the organization became such an important component as to the maturity of the HR function and what we can be. So I found myself gravitating back towards a larger company, and that's when MasterCard reached out. And so I started there as a people business partner. So most of my career, I've always been a people business partner. And then when I took on one of the client groups here, it was one of our faster growing revenue generating businesses. So I did that for about 3 years. And then the chief people officer asked me to take on this role. And now I've been doing this.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Sometimes we have these various life experience and work experiences, and sometimes we're in it and we think, why is this part of my journey? And listening to you, everything that you did, every building block led you to the exact moment that you're in. So it's just cool kind of hearing the arc that got you here, because it is a time when every organization, clearly MasterCard, is looking to really optimize that HR function to really get the most out of its people in the most efficient, cost-effective way that really drives engagement. So can you begin to describe this recent transformation around HR that you've led? And I'm curious, how did you know it was time for a change? Because I speak to clients all the time and they're on the precipice of it. So I'm curious, how did you know it was time for a change, and what were you trying to accomplish when you started, and how's it going?
Yeah, wonderful question. So I think context is always important, right? Because that's what led us here. And so, for example, at MasterCard, between 2018 and 2023, because I think that's a good feeling of leading up to and where we were when we made these decisions. Our revenue increased significantly. So we went from 15 billion to 25 billion in that span of time. Our employee population grew from 15,000 to 33,000, right? We had a new CEO join in 2020 with a new strategy. The board wanted to talk about company culture, and that was elevated to that conversation, right? our employee expectations have shifted.
Mm.
The consumer experience is what an employee wants in their workplace as well.
Uh-huh.
Like that's what we were dealing with. So it was like, oh boy, like, looking at our function, because the company has grown so fast, but have we grown and
Mm.
paused and thought about, are we set up for today and for the future?
Mm.
And so it was in that question we asked ourselves that said, we don't think we've changed meaningfully and can really keep up with the pace of change that's all around us in the
Mm.
macro environment within the company. And so our goal was to, ensure our function and our products were going to be scalable, right? We need to improve our employee experience, and we had to clarify the roles and responsibilities because with all that growth, the example I love to give is you can have one person who, in the old world, was approving a day-to-day offer while also trying to figure out the multi-job family pay range across 80 plus countries. Like one person doing both things. So you had to
Right,
understand strategy and the operations and how do you organize and segment that a bit better. So
right.
that's what led us to looking at this. And so, how is it going? Look, there's ups and downs across the way, but it's like a beautiful stock chart that you want to see, which is it may go up and down, but it's always going upward as
Over
the
time,
Yeah,
over
exactly.
time.
Right. It's a very iterative process and learning. It's because everything is connected in our function. You want to change one thing about a people business partner, that's going to affect, how our centers of expertise need to operate. You want to
Sure.
adjust the operations, this is going to change the technology. It's also
Mm.
interconnected. So as you start to shift things, other things have to shift around it. And so, being iterative, and creating the momentum has become a critical part of what we've been doing for the last 3 years. We started with individual groups, and in order to avoid silos, we started looking across our functions. And so, how does work happen independent of org design? How do you think about people business partners, our centers of expertise, our global business service centers? How does it all come together to
Mm.
get work done across each other? And so that's what we've been on this journey now for the last 3 years trying to solve that.
Listening to, I'm thinking of, the example that I always use with clients is, like think of a chef. We need the chef doing the most important thing, but if the chef is also setting the tables of the restaurant and doing the
Yeah.
marketing for the restaurant and doing the dishwasher, like you just can't have the chef do really use their superpowers. And I think that what you raise is so important. Sometimes we have folks doing both the strategic and the tactical and the implementation, and it is one, not the best use of their time, and two, they're so heads down on what they're doing that that interconnectedness, the more holistic view doesn't happen. So how did you even go about it? I remember when we spoke, you talked about kind of this experience owner. How did you set all of
Yeah.
that up?
Yeah, so I love the analogy of the chef one because even there, right? Oh, we're now going to create these new meals. Well, do you have the
Exactly.
right number of dishes? Do you have the
Yeah.
right ingredients? It takes a whole army of people to be on board with that. And so, even taking that analogy, how we design experiences, how we deliver to the promise to our employees of what we are to them, kind of requires that thinking end
Mm.
to end. And so when we went on the journey, right, that first year, each functional area kind of said to itself, what do I need to do to be
Mhm.
prepared for the future? And they made the changes. But to avoid being overly siloed, we said, okay, well, but if you change the responsibilities within, you're going to start affecting the responsibilities across. And it was in that conversation and understanding that we started to emerge this concept, and there's many of different ones that we've done, but one of them, to your point, is this idea of an experience owner.
So smart.
Yeah, and the idea of that was to say, a problem statement that we had in the past, right, was we were designing a new experience or solution or product to our employees. But were we fully understanding what are the needs once it is deployed, for example? Do we have the right inquiry management set up? How do
Mm.
employees get their questions answered? Do we have the right tech capability to do it? Do we have the right capacity within tech to do it?
Mhm.
How do we even prioritize what investments to do because there's only minimal amounts on this one particular experience versus already starting to design it without ever really knowing, do we have the funding to get this done in a meaningful manner, right? So the idea is that there would be a role that was created called the experience owner. And what we did was we took all the products and services across the HR function and we organized them into a service catalog that gave an umbrella of an experience. And then we said to one of our team members, you are kind of the general manager of this experience and these products
Okay.
and services that sit within there. It's a lot of accountability when we're going to say you own this end to end,
Uh-huh.
but you are not by yourself. And so we knew we had to be more product management minded in our thinking. So we turned to the organization and said, we do this across MasterCard. How do we solve for our product management for external customers?
Uh-huh.
So they created something called Program Model many years ago. And we said, well, how do we do a version of that? How do we improve the I've got people sitting in technology, I've got people sitting in operations, people sitting in a function, but they have to act as one team. And so program models solved how to do that. So we said, we're going to do the same thing. We have an experience owner who's the general manager. We have a service delivery owner who's supposed to be responsible to understand what are the operational capabilities and needs of the experiences. And then we have a technology focal, and they're responsible to say, what is the proper tech stack? What is the investment and infrastructure that we have for technology? You bring these three roles together. So when we're designing experiences that are new or executing existing ones, or we're trying to, enhance one,
Mhm.
you bring these groups together to talk about it up
Mm.
front and ensure that we're thinking through end to end, what will this experience be like? And so it's in its infancy, JV. There's so much to be learned and known about, but this is the idea that we're trying to get through across the function.
I love this. It feels the word that comes to mind is it feels indulgent. It feels indulgent and so important that we steal the time from ourselves and the meetings that we get pulled into to really map this out. Because, planning with the end in mind, there's such massive inefficiency on the other end if we don't indulge in this time and really sit very still and understand the processes. So I'm curious, what kind of feedback have you gotten from folks? I'd imagine it was a whole change management piece within the HR and tech teams just to start thinking this way. I'm curious, what kind of feedback have you? I know it's in its infant stage, but
Yeah.
what have you heard so far from other folks within the company or other folks in the HR team?
Yeah. Overall, the feedback has been positive, right? I think that, the problems we're trying to solve for, it's definitely moved forward the solution against those problems. So communication, working together better upfront, being able to plan out what's the impact of the experience we're doing. All of those things has
Mm,
gone, I think that is where the positive feedback
mm,
comes in, right? A good example for us is we recently created an employee stock purchase program. And
mm.
it was one of our first moments where the experience model kind of came to life, where we brought those three roles together and the teams that support, obviously. And so it was one that we deployed into the organization last year to a great deal of success and fanfare. In fact, we do an annual CEO award, awards plural across the company, and they were just yesterday.
Oh,
And this year we did something called the People's Choice Award,
oh, I love this.
where the employees got to choose what was the project or initiative or solution that was brought forward that had the
Oh,
greatest impact.
this feels very MTV. I'm listening to, I'm picturing. Yeah, right. This is awesome. This is fun.
Yeah,
So the
and
People's Choice Award, great.
the Mastercard way, which is our behavior, our culture, what matters. So what proved that out best? And the team that worked on employee stock purchase program just won it for the whole company. So it was a really well received
Nice.
solution and employee experience that we created. And so having these roles come together and talk about it was a great deal of success. So we've increased communication, right? And we've gotten better at prioritization. But the things that we're still working on, because I think feedback is important, you have to understand both avenues, right? You know, we've made progress, but we still need to do more communication,
Mm,
more prioritization, right? And prioritization could be challenging both within the experience, but also across experiences, right?
mm.
So how do we prioritize? There's a lot of great ideas and ways of operating and thinking. So, the feedback has been how do we continue to focus on that? The other is each of these roles individually, it's a lot of weight behind them. And
Mhm,
so, what is the right infrastructure, tools, processes, ways of operating
mhm,
to help continue to reduce the pain points and ensure that we're working together as
mhm.
a group? So, it's part of the natural growing pains, but I think the feedback has been this has been helpful. We're making strides. We're seeing great improvements in the experiences that we're doing. and we need to ensure that we're continuing to invest behind this so that the sustainability of operating this way can work. And time will tell how that will continue on that journey. But overall, it's been positive.
Oh my gosh. I know as HR leaders, we're always looking for that ROI. We put these programs out in the wild, and to get that feedback is everything. And to get that feedback that this award was won is huge. So congrats.
Mhm.
Congrats. And then it's addictive, right? You can point to it and say, we did such a good job with this rollout. Like, let's do it again, right? You want to kind of keep on elevating addictive in the good way. Like, you want to keep on having those types of successes. Um, so for folks who are joining us, do you have any advice on how HR teams can be better listeners? It sounds like you've been really open to the feedback with no ego and received a lot of it and made tweaks along the way. So, any advice on how to be that kind of a listener after a big transformation like this so that you're constantly, with no ego, getting those opportunities to improve upon things?
Yeah. First of all, I think what you just said hits it the most. The mindset, let go of the ego. Like, there's always things to be better at. Not being so precious about something the way it was or has been. Like, there was a reason why it existed the way it did at the time
Hmm.
it was created and why it needed to be.
Hmm.
As context shift, we should be open to what that context is now
Hmm.
having us focus on that's different. So there's definitely a mindset part to this. I think the other thing is knowing the culture of your company
Hmm.
is going to be an important part to how to listen, because some companies, like, they're big on constant feedback, informal, formal. We
Hmm.
talk to each other. We're very direct. Some cultures aren't, right? And maybe it's overly polite and people don't want to give feedback, or they want to
Uh-huh.
be, positive in what they're doing. So you kind of want to know where you're at and what you're playing with, because you got to meet your employees where they're at.
Uh-huh.
Right. So for us, we've been a culture moving towards increasing feedback. We're trying to get better at that, being more open and honest, creating more natural touch points, whether it's organic or inorganic, right? And so tapping into that part of our culture is how, for us, we're trying to manage the feedback part of this. I find that in my career, the various HR tends to have a pretty good pulse on what's
Sure.
going on, whether it's formal, informal. Like, we have engagement surveys,
Mhm.
great, but even whether you're a people business partner, or maybe you're part of a shared service team who's managing inquiries on day in, day out basis, we know and feel where those pain points are. We know where the escalations are coming in.
Mhm.
We know how they're feeling. So it's less of an issue about listening for us. It's how do we turn that listening into something that is actionable and pragmatic, because feedback needs to be digestible.
Oh,
It
sure. Yes.
needs to be done in a way that, like, for example, we could take benefits as an experience, and we could have every day 5 people say some type of feedback about it across an employee base of thousands. Like, it's never going to be digestible. So how do
Uh-huh.
you organize the feedback, prioritize it, create ways that our experience owners can understand it, create avenues for our people business partners to gather that where it needs to be,
Hmm.
moments when it's direct to the employee,
Hmm.
self-servicing ways of orchestrating all of that. I think is the harder part, because the listening was plenty of ears. It's making that into meaningful, pragmatic ways of operating and helping our experience owners know what to do with that feedback.
It's a really good point. There's so much noise in the system, right? So kind of parsing that out and figuring out what the feedback is to share back. I always think also of just storytelling, right? So for the end user, the employee, to maybe speak about what it was like to have this really smooth experience with a benefit situation or with handling developing additional skills through, employee development or training, kind of talk about what it meant to them and how it shaped their life. That always sits with me. I feel like some of your commercials have done that over time, if I must say. Yeah, that's storytelling. Um,
Yeah.
so I'm thinking about, again, the arc of your career, and you've been in it with me and just kind of seeing how HR has shifted so much. Some companies still view HR as a cost center, and I have respect for them, but others, companies that you and I have, worked at, and they've taken this more kind of consultative approach where the HR business partner, the people partner is truly at the table, truly integral. And we've heard from, a lot of folks that, in this time of shifting economy and post-COVID, some are finding that the HR role does not seem as integral. And I'm curious, I'm all about, elevating the role of HR to kind of create this more modern, modern workplace and more HR, more modern work function related to that. So I'm curious what you've seen in terms of the shift, and how is it that kind of these HR transformation projects can keep HR as that strategic partner to the head of the organization?
Yeah, I love this question. I have the equal passion as you're talking, Jamie, about this too. So, I've been fortunate for the majority of my career to, as a HR business partner, kind of have that seat at the table. I remember coming in, a lot
Mhm.
of people, the conversations like, well, how do you get a seat? How do you get a seat? And I've been fortunate that I always felt like the companies I worked at had a seat at it. It was what you did with it, right?
Uh-huh.
That's where it differed. So we were part of leadership teams. We were a part of getting or asking for our feedback and insights. But I also noticed it did differ by leader. Like even if the company and the culture is X, each individual leader has their own unique experiences they're bringing to the
Mhm.
table themselves about their
Mhm.
opinions, as well as what they're dealing with. And so, um, you know, it the more I found there to be, um, you were able to build credibility and trust,
Mhm.
the door open to be what you wanted the role to be with your clients, right? And so whether it was going to be some big strategic transformation and the role being pivotal to that, to we're just in a day-to-day running of the organization and we need to
Mhm.
focus a bit better on talent movement. So the topics will vary a lot, and we don't always need to search for, well, how do I elevate? How do I? Sometimes going and ebbing and flowing with that and meeting the leader
Mm.
where they're at, but then taking them with you, having them
Mm.
see what we're capable of. And I
Mhm.
think that what really helps with that too, and it's something that I didn't realize till later in my career so far, Jamie, is the importance of operational excellence in the function as a whole
Mm.
is a credibility that allows for the function to be strategic with their
Mm.
clients, right? It's hard to say, let's work on this transformation if people aren't getting paid proper. It's
Right.
hard, right, to say, let's do some succession planning of the senior leaders for the next 10 years of the organization when benefits are not being
Mhm.
allocated properly and paid. Like, there's something to be said about one of the most strategic things we can do is continue to invest in the operational excellence of our function.
Mm.
We are a system that works together, right? And so, as a people business partner, I need that credibility to go and talk about these other topics, knowing that everything else is being managed and handled as well. So we're one team showing up, right? Going away from the, oh, I know it's impossible to talk to so and so. They're so difficult. The shared service centers, they're slow. Let me handle that for you. I'll take
Mhm.
it. That undermines all of that credibility and
Of
all that
course.
trust, right? So how we work together shifts how we can be strategically impactful. And I think some of the things that we can do, I know recently at MasterCard, kind of two things come to mind where I think I'm very proud of our function and how we show up as a whole. And so one of them was, I talked a little bit earlier about the MasterCard way. So what are
Yeah.
the behaviors that matter to us? We as a function are one of the pivotal elements to company culture. We can impact it positively or negatively. And so when the new CEO came on board and said, we should be looking at not what we do only, but how we do it
Mm.
as
The
a company.
competencies, the way you go about it. Sure.
That's yeah. And so our function was asked to help lead this work, but it wasn't like HR sits in a room, designs what we want, and comes to the business and says, here you go. This is a business imperative.
Mm.
And our function plays a role to help them do this, bringing the leaders together, bringing recommendations, thought leadership in this space, but allowing them the ability to work together. We're the connector of the leaders of the organization. We're the connectors of the functions. And so creating this space and time so that they can create, for us, it was, three pillars, each with three behaviors
Mhm.
underneath, right? So it was move fast, grow together, create value. And we deployed that across the entire organization, implemented across our performance management solutions, our talent solutions, right? It's a way of operating now. Our function strategically helped make this happen, not because we did it, but we brought the right people together to help drive it. Same thing, we just recently did a restructuring of our entire, or not entire, but a restructuring of some of our senior leaders at the CEO level.
Mm.
So direction there. And
Mhm.
Our function helped shepherd that. We were the ones to help bring forward what are the questions, concerns, issues with what we're trying to address so that
Hmm.
we're aligning the org design to the strategy of the company.
Beautiful.
Our function helps do that. Yeah.
And it sounds like you have such a strategic CEO that joined that really values that role of HR. And in that, when you kind of, took a look at the top of the house, did you then look at the competencies that you mentioned, moving fast, et cetera, to determine who the right folks were for the right seats and what skills folks might need to work on?
Absolutely. And it
Mm.
was, you know, both in how we did the work is done in the master way. So we had to move fast, right? Create value,
Yeah.
right? And all the, like, it was in the way that we operated, as well
Mm.
as the leaders who needed to be in these important roles. How do we think about that? Again, the business were making these calls, right? Who were the right
Sure.
leaders? Who were the right players? The
Sure.
CEO want, but we were the ones to help put those questions in place. And is
Mm.
that the right leader for that reason? What is the way
Yeah.
in which we want to do this? If we change this functional area and it sits over here, that's going to impact these other functional areas. Have we thought through how do we want to manage and navigate the new way of operating? We're rewiring the company when you think about
Mm.
it, when you do these decisions. And so our function can play a role in helping think those moments through and the impact of it. And so it's still ongoing, right? Even when you
Yeah.
go and launch these things, as you know,
Sure.
Jamie, it's now constant. It's just part of
Sure.
our fabric of operating
Yes.
that our function is to help find those moments as they emerge, help bring solutions, elevate questions and issues that need to be resolved. So yeah, again, I feel very fortunate to work at a company where I get to, as in my role, do this with my senior leaders. Um,
Absolutely.
but yeah.
Wow. It is, they're dang lucky to have you. They're kind of elevating this because, when we always find when the more modern organizations that really value HR, they always have the strongest engagement, they always have the most efficiency, and they always make sure that they have the right folks at the top of the house that focus on not just hitting the goals, but it's about how they go about hitting those goals that makes folks want to work with them and have that followership. So I love that you're in an organization that values that. So you and I are living and working and parenting in very interesting times. There's a lot that could kind of keep us up at night. But from an HR perspective, what are kind of the one or two top things that are you think kind of are keeping HR leaders of today up at night? What are the top things on their mind? They're stressing
Yeah,
them out. Yeah, the things that they need to solve.
that's right. And I imagine everyone answers a question differently, but from my vantage point, I feel like the things that are constantly being talked about and worrisome over time is number one, the impact of AI, just in
Mm,
our workforce, what that's going to do. Not even
mhm,
just how AI impacts HR, but how it impacts the workforce as a
mhm,
whole in the macro environment. So I think that's one. And the other is the kind of the evolving political landscape, and
mhm,
that's including like whether that's increased sovereignty globally
mhm,
or within the U.S., kind of the evolution of DEI. I mean, these are
mhm,
things that are dramatically impacting how
mhm,
organizations will operate
mhm,
and be. So those two really
mhm.
become top of mind right now.
Absolutely. Yep.
Mm.
Yep. Speaking, I want to dive into AI, but in terms of the swirl around DEI, um, just prior to us having this time to talk, we were speaking to a client who themselves they found themselves in a stressful moment where they are just signing on for their benefits for um, moving forward. And in part of their benefits program is um, family planning and gender affirming care. And the head of HR said, I am nervous to sign this contract because if in the future those are things that we will get in trouble for, shamed for, assessed, dinged, whatever the verb is, I don't want my name on that contract with the benefit company. And so we spent a lot of time just kind of talking through from a legal perspective, what all the ramifications are. This was not on anyone's mind as a way to hijack a Friday morning a couple of weeks ago. But this is a quick example of how the swirl is really impacting our day to day and our ability to kind of do our day job and also keep very focused on the forever goal, creating employee engagement and insulating the organization from risk and kind of the intersection of those two things. But I think we are in a moment where we need to really thread the needle so carefully.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
if you and I were to speak 6 months from now, it would be a completely different conversation as this all unfolds, but we're truly, it's evolving for all of us real time. Um,
100%.
yeah, so that will be another podcast that you and I will do. But while we're waiting to see how that all lands, I do want to dive into AI because AI for HR is something that you're in good company. I think that very much does. Keep folks up at night. And I always say it's not AI that's going to take our jobs, but the people who know how to really use AI that are going to take our jobs, right? It's really, I think, beholden on all of us, at home, at work, to just really kind of get more and more comfortable with it so we can really advise our organization. So let's just kind of set the table. How are you using it at MasterCard? How is AI a part of what you do?
Yeah, so the company as a whole, I think, in context is important, but we do now have, the chief AI officer of the company, just so we can understand how we as a company
Yeah,
want to think about, organize, and orchestrate ourselves,
great.
including both external and internal usages of, right? So we will be a part of that system of thinking, but we have been using AI within the HR function for quite a while already. So we today we leverage it right to enhance our employee experiences. So we do increased personalization. That's one of the big ones, and then we look to reduce friction
Hmm.
in our workflows and our tasks. So to call it like three specific examples right now. So one is we foster internal mobility and career growth, leveraging a platform. It's called Unlock. It's our internal talent
Okay.
marketplace, and it matches employees to opportunities based on their
Hmm.
skills and career goals. And but what powers behind that is AI, for example. So that's one use case that we've been doing. We also, oh,
Before you
good.
go to the next use case, can I ask, in the
Yeah.
olden days before AI, were there people manually kind of putting these matchmaking moments together of who's got the skills and what's the opportunity?
Yeah, you hope someone wasn't so.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. You know what I mean? Because the
yeah,
problem is, if you were a people business partner, and you support a business of just 100 people, sure, you can know do be. We're talking
right. Within,
38,000
right.
employees across worlds that we don't even know what's even needed
Yes.
across the org. And that was that we during COVID, we spent a good amount of time taking our workforce and moving it to a place that allowed us to put people in roles where we needed them to be.
Hmm.
And so that was a very significant lift across the organization that, to your point, was highly manual. And it
Yeah.
became one of the use cases to say, well, by bringing in a platform to help us do
Yes.
that, it has, I mean, it's volumes of improvement and efficiency. And by the way, better experiences because our
Right.
employees feel empowered. They get to choose and think and see, right? They get to sign up for projects. They can sign up for
Right.
or apply to new roles.
It's
And
right.
yeah,
I love this example. And what we always see when our clients are in this moment is that they then realize the folks who used to look after those programs are then freed up from more of the, I'll call it joyless work of some of the admin to do the more strategic work. But what you're saying is that, if you have a department of 100, it was within that silo that you knew
yeah.
the skills, and now it's more holistic. So sorry to interrupt you. So that's one
No,
great example of how it's being used. Yeah, what was the other example? I love to hear these.
yeah, no, of course, and definitely one that's we're extremely proud of. The team has been phenomenal working with Gloat and getting this launched. We've had really great success. So I'm glad I was able to share that because I think it's such a big success of our company and the team that's been working on it. Um, the second, using AI to kind of support our employee well-being,
Hmm.
right? So automated prompts for better scheduling, creating focus time, right? We even use it for sentiment analysis to
Ah,
extract all the insights from the employee survey. So, but the lenses are the well-being of our employees, and how does AI help us do that? And then the third is, by automating processes. So
mhm.
interview scheduling, meeting notes, right? Allowing employees to focus more, like you said before, on the strategic tasks. So, the interviewing scheduling alone was a big
Mhm.
success in terms of time and energy, and AI was really helpful to us in automating that experience.
I'm very impressed with what the head of AI has already implemented, and you're off to a very fast start. So I'm thrilled that you have all of these woven in. I literally could talk to you forever, but I want to end where we always do on in the Inspire Leadership podcast is so things on a personal note. So with all that you have going on, and my gosh, it's a lot. What do you do for self-care, for joy? What energizes you these days? What kind of
Yeah,
fills your tank to do all this great work?
yeah. Laughter. I don't. There's like it is the most recharging moment for me. I mean,
Mm.
before entering the workforce, I in school I was a double major in business management and theater. So I done acting, did improvisational comedy, did some of that after college as well here in New York City. So for many years I did that,
Oh,
and it was the way that like outside of work I charged myself through those experiences of doing shows and laughter, and it's community, it's connections, like the ideals of improv, or you make your scene partner look good, yes, and you don't bring questions, you bring in something of value, like just weaving that into my day to day. I try to finds to be the supercharge for me. So even at work, laughing with a colleague, building communities within and across people at work, and at home, I get to laugh with my kids all the time. I
mm,
have a yeah, I have a 9-year-old and a 5-year-old, and I just coming home after a day work, sitting at the table, my youngest will just do something that just makes everyone laugh, and it's an immediate recharge.
mm,
So throughout the day, I try to do it. Certainly at home with my family, we love to laugh and be together like that.
mm.
And then I'll like decompress by like watching a Netflix show with my wife. Like that's
Yeah,
something that we
yeah,
enjoy to end our
yeah,
day,
yes,
dumbing our brain down and just listen to someone else talk for through a show. So yeah,
right
that's a
on.
bit of it.
What are you binging these days? Anything good?
In terms of like the like
Oh,
the
sorry. Are there any good Netflix shows? I think I just started, what is it? White
uh
Lotus. Yeah, I just started that. I didn't know if you've any shows that you're loving these days.
well, a lot, yeah. I mean, my favorite show of all time has been Ted Lasso, so
Oh,
I've actually watched
yes,
that twice. I know.
yes.
Um,
Love him. Oh my God, he's
yeah,
it's a
and
man.
my
You
wife
know
and I
what?
yeah,
You've reminded me. I've watched it. I'm gonna go back and watch it again.
yes,
Why
it's
not?
just
Why not?
such a good feel good moment. It's just such a good show.
Mm.
Um,
I did not know that you did improv. I love this. And I just think that that is one of the greatest gifts, kind of bringing that joy and that silliness to your kids at home. So, it's a great source of energy. Nick, thank you so much for spending this time. I learned a ton. And I know that for folks in the Inspire community who are also thinking where to get started, is it too big of a lift, how to partner with leadership, these are all phenomenal tips for them to take and implement right away. So thank you. Thank you for your
of
time.
course.
I love your wisdom.
No, thank you very much for your time, and what you're doing is really phenomenal for our community. So thank you for spearheading so much of these connection points and sharing what people are working on and doing and recharging us in this way. So thank you.
You're very sweet. All right, take good care and we will talk soon.